Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah and this is my channel, Novel Serendipity, and this is going to be my semi-late April wrap-up. Description box is going to have a few new links in it, and I just want to tell you about those just real quick. The first one being my influencer link for YesStyle.com. If you don't know about YesStyle, they have Asian products, they have Korean and Japanese skincare, makeup, jewelry, clothing, stationery, so on and so forth. I am currently wearing my Peri Para lip color. It is my favorite lip color. It stays and you barely have to reapply once you put on like your first coat or two. Let it dry completely and you're pretty much good to go the entire day. Peri Para is one of the best lip tints colors I have ever used in my entire life, so that influencer link will be down below in the description box. Please check out the website. And yes, so here we are. The second link that will be down there is for fanrank.com. I am currently a reviewer and working on the database for a UK creator who has put this website together to put all of your reviewing needs all in one place, meaning books, movies, TV shows, games, music. Gosh, I feel like I'm repeating things, but all of those things all in one. The website is in a work in progress, but if you want to click on that link, follow me, and maybe even review one thing, that would really help me out. It's just a little side job that I took on, and like I said, I would really appreciate it. But let's get into the reviews. I'm going to be talking about a total of 4 books, and I will not be talking about the manga I read in April because that is going to be in a separate video. The first book I want to talk about is Forest of Souls by Lori M. Lee, and I gave this a 3.5 star and I rounded it up to 4 on Goodreads. There was a few aspects of this book that felt super unique and I really enjoyed it. The first being the characters and the lore that was kind of built around these characters and their history and so forth. It really built the intrigue from page 1 to page whatever the last page is, and I adored it. This is a YA fantasy, except it doesn't have any romance, at least in book 1. I can see where romance would come into play in book 2, but in book 1 it's not there. I feel like Lori kind of set it up so it was more about the friendship in the book than any romance, which I adored. Like, we love a good best friend duo, like we really do. But I do see where she made enough steps for going forward for there to be some sort of romance, though I'm not sure if the book even needs it. I do love my fantasy romances. I didn't know there wasn't romance until like halfway through this book, and so I looked it up and I was like, is there romance? And everyone was like, no. And I was like, oh shoot. Which I'm kind of glad I didn't know, because if I like I said, I love my fantasy romances, but if I knew there was no fantasy romance in this book, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. With the lack of romance, you really get to delve right into the friendship. This is one of the best friend friendships I have read in a really long time, and Lori M. Lee did a really good job of showing like the ups and downs of friendships, the little fights or spats that you would get in any friendship, how trust and love and so forth goes a long way but isn't necessarily enough all the time, and we really get to explore that in this book, in this friendship, and it was something that was done really well. Our main character is an orphan. I want to say her name is Saoirse. I might be wrong, but she is an orphan and she's being trained to basically be the spy of the queen, and all of that goes out the window when her best friend Sango is killed, and then Saoirse brings her back to life. Like, that's all on the back cover or like the synopsis on the inside dust jacket of the book, so it's not really giving anything away, but that's the whole premise of the book, where Saoirse is basically being trained to be a spy assassin for the queen, and all that goes out the window when she brings Sango back to life, and what that means, because Sango is from a family with power and titles and Saoirse is not, and what that means for the two. Like, they are each giving up so much for the other, and it made this friendship so heartwarming. The plot of this book was, sometimes it felt a little stagnant, but what what this book did absolutely phenomenal with was the characters, the main and side characters. Honestly, I think this is one of the best examples of main and side characters that get like the same amount of page time, but they are just so overwhelmingly compelling. And each and every one of them was dripping with personality. We got everything. We got hate, love, sass, wit, and each character's personality was really developed. And I thought it was, like I said, just a great example of character development from the first to the last page of this book. And I'm so excited to see how much more we get of each character in the next book. Again, the plot of this book wasn't, I guess it wasn't everything I wanted it to be. At some points, it felt a little disjointed. It felt like we were being told a lot of things instead of like shown, like through like character action and such. Sometimes it just felt stagnant or confusing. And it was really easy to feel like you were getting a small or like medium-sized info dump, like at least once a chapter. I know those books are for some people, they're just not for me. Going into this book, there is a lot of words, phrases, names that you kind of have to wrap your mind around, especially when you first start reading the book. You kind of had to keep track. There is a glossary at the front of the book, and that helped a lot. And I loved how unique it was. It wasn't overdone in a way. There was no chance that you would ever be able to understand these characters and phrases and names and such. But after reading a while, you just slowly catch on where some books, they use these things and it really overwhelms the reader. But I don't feel like that was the case with this book. With that being said, I think this book has a lot setting, plot, character-wise. There is a lot to wrap your mind around, so I think this book would be a little difficult to binge, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because I think reading it slowly or slower than you would normally read your books really gave you an opportunity to really absorb the information you were getting, and I think it gave for a better reading experience. I do think that the sequel will have a lot of opportunity to wrap up what was more confusing in this book and make the setting and plot and where those are kind of headed easier to comprehend. But all in all, I thought this was a really solid book. The next book I read, I was going to talk about, but I am not now in light of everything going on with this author, but I will just state that I did read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I will post a couple links down below in the description box of places you can go to either educate yourself a little bit on what's going on between Palestine and Israel, and a couple links for you to donate if you are willing or able to. But besides that, I did give this book 5 stars and I really like the representation. And this is the first time I've seen myself really portrayed in a character in a book with trauma or depression and self-loathing and hating and kind of getting through that, and a character that also takes that out on the people around them. But that's all I'm going to say about that one. I'm not going to go too far into it. One, with everything that's going on with Sarah J. Maas, and two, because this book is talked about every other day, especially since it was released. So moving on. The third novel that I finished up in April was Chosen by Kiersten White, and okay, I loved Slayer. I've never watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Actually, that's a lie. I watched episode 1 after I finished Slayer, like the book by Kiersten White, which is the first book to this duology, and I wasn't really into it. I'm so sorry. I love Slayer though. I think I gave it 4 stars and I was really into it and really excited for where book 2 was going. Unfortunately, I gave it a 2.5 star. I rounded up to 3 on Goodreads, I think. Yeah, I rounded up to 3 on Goodreads, but it was just super disappointing, especially everything we got in book 1. I was just like, the conclusion to this duology was just not everything I wanted it to be. The sisters in this book, oh gosh, I wanted to slap them, and I wanted to slap them both. They are some of the most annoying characters I have ever read, ever. And they almost felt like 2 different characters from book 1. Like, I get character development, but for them to feel like completely different people was just a little disappointing, because I really like Nina. Nina's like our main, she's the chosen, and that's kind of all of book 1 is following Nina and her sister Artemis, and Artemis was basically trained to protect Nina to become basically a warrior, and Nina was just the meek, timid, weak one, and then then what that means for the weak, timid one to be the one that becomes like the chosen one, and what that means for the strong one who's basically feeling like they've given up everything. The dialogue and the development just wasn't there for me, and I was, like I said, so disappointed. I get that there would be a lot of confusion and conflict that would arise when these two roles were reversed. The strong one now feeling weak, now feeling useless, and the weak one now feeling strong and powerful and being looked at for the first time in her entire life. And I can see where conflict would arise, and it did. I think Artemis took away almost all my enjoyment for this book. Nina isn't nearly as annoying as Artemis was. I hated the development and where Artemis's story went in Chosen. I hated it. Artemis is sad and dealing with trauma and kind of the fallout of everything in book 1 on her own in the past that these two sisters have kind of lived, and now they're becoming young adults. And I didn't like the way Artemis's story was kind of told. Like, the trauma felt unrealistic. It felt forced and almost lazy. And it honestly felt like Artemis was basically like, hey, I'm no longer the strong one, I'm the weak one. Basically, I'm gonna go away, and then every time I come back, I'm just gonna stab everyone in the back for my own gain. It's just like, you lived your whole life protecting your sister because you love her so much. Like, that is her story. Like, that is her life, basically. And now she's like, well, if I have to run my sister over with a car to get what I want, so be it. It's like, really? And there is a part of my review on Goodreads that I put up that I will just read to you because I feel like I will not be able to articulate myself again about how much Artemis just didn't feel right. Artemis then goes on to look down and talk down to her sister, who, if we are being honest, had it way worse growing up than Artemis herself. It felt so extremely childish and had me wanting to chuck the book across the room. Just every instance of dialogue between Nina and Artemis had me either annoyed or gritting my teeth with displeasure. Every time Artemis came on page, I was like, shit, like, can we not? There's also one character interaction that I was hoping would kind of resolve itself in a really respectful conversation, and it never happened. And honestly, it might be the biggest disappointment of this entire book. Sorry, not sorry. Artemis's love interest did something really horrible to Nina in the past and has never apologized, has never taken accountability, and Artemis has known about it the entire time from childhood when this incident happened to present. They are now like 16, 17, whatever. Artemis makes excuses for her love interest, and Nina has never once gotten an apology, has just been told you overreacted, so on and so forth. But like, what happened to her was horrible, especially for like a young person, like absolutely horrible. And the fact that this person is not taking any responsibility for their actions, and Artemis is like, you know what? I'm on their side. Sorry, Nina. I know they were horrible, but I don't give a rat's ass. Like, no. Just the fact that Nina was treated so horribly by this person, and neither this person nor Artemis has even acknowledged the fact. I don't know why it just grinds my gears. I don't know why. I hate it. It was one of the scenes I really, really wanted in Chosen before the end of this duology, and I never got it, and it just angers me to no end. The story development, like, let's move on from the characters for just a hot second. The story development didn't really go anywhere. It felt really stagnant, just bleh. It felt like one of those movies where you feel like you've been watching the movie for 4 hours and then you like check on Netflix and you've only been watching it for like 25 minutes. That's what this book felt like. It went nowhere, and it just had two sisters arguing the entire time. One being basically alone and traumatized and having no one by her side to support her, and the other one just going off stabbing everyone in the back. Like, I don't understand whatsoever. Like, literally nothing of substance happened. I mean, Nina also has like a love interest that didn't go anywhere. Like, no one and nothing went anywhere. This book was just so flat in so many ways. The humor in this book was there, but it was one of its redeeming qualities, but it still wasn't up to par with just how much I liked and enjoyed book 1. This book felt like a big miss. I'm really disappointed, and we're gonna move on to my last book in this April wrap up. So those 3 books I got from the library, but this one I have in physical copy. It's the Downstairs Girl by Stacey Lee, and this was a book of the month book that I got. I will probably be unhauling this because though I did give this book 4 stars, I don't think I'll ever reread it, and if I'm not rereading a book, I'm trying to unhaul more books to make more room on my shelves. So here we are. And let me tell you, Stacey Lee knows how to write a character. Her characters are so interesting and intriguing and realistic, and I loved it. Each character is well-rounded, has history, has a personality, has feelings, has dreams and aspirations, and just everything. Everything a real person would have, Stacey Lee thought of and gave it to us in this book. The historical setting of this book really grounded all of the characters that Stacey Lee has made and really just weave them into the plot so well. And I feel like the historical aspect of this book was probably its biggest strength, which is a good thing because it is a historical young adult fiction novel. Standalone. Why am I talking like this? This book talks a lot, and like it's basically the main plot, main conflict, main everything for the character and those around her. But this book talks a lot about what it meant to be Chinese, half Chinese, there was even some Black characters and what it was like for them to be in Atlanta, Georgia in the late 19th century. Stacey Lee did a really good job at taking real historical facts and events and making the plot concrete and cohesive. And she did a masterful job at putting together fiction and nonfiction aspects of this book and using her characters and the main conflict to just run with it. This book also does a lot to talk about what it means to be a woman in this time period and in the South of the United States as well during this time period, and I thought it was just so well done. The main plot of this book, it follows Jo, and she is a half Chinese young lady, and she is moonlighting as a advice column for a white paper for white readers. Her pen name is Miss Sweetie, and she uses this platform to elevate her voice that is otherwise silenced in her everyday life. So it's a way for her to get her thoughts, feelings, and a way to use her voice to get people to listen, and they do. The aspect of this book I thought was going to be a little bit more thrilling. I thought it was going to be a little bit more front and center, the main conflict, or again, like thriller aspect of the book, but it was kind of sidelined like a quarter of the way through the book, and it was there and it was talked about, but it wasn't the main conflict. And I feel like that part of the synopsis was a little misleading. The book slowly turned in from Jo moonlighting as a half Chinese advice columnist, Miss Sweetie, focused more on her history. Her past came to light and what that means essentially, but I can still appreciate that plotline for what it was. Like, I just wish I had more of it because her moonlighting as an advice columnist was just super interesting and probably my favorite aspect of this book. But like I said, I can appreciate it for what it was, but the book did shift a little bit and focus more on Jo as a person, not necessarily what she as a person was doing. At times, this book felt a little complicated and confusing because it does take that shift like I was just saying, but a lot of people are introduced, a lot of history for not only Jo, but the person who's taking care of her, her employer, her employer's daughter. Like, you get history for each and every one of them, and at times, if you're really not paying attention, you can get confused because it really is just thrown at you. Stacey Lee just kind of trusts you to absorb all that and hold on to it. And so when the plot picked up, you had to hold on to all this information you were just given and then remember it as the plot went on. And it didn't feel info dumpy. It just, I don't know, it just felt like a lot. It didn't feel like the writing itself wasn't info dumpy. It's just you get a lot of history just here, and I'm just not, I don't know how to explain that part of the book. When each character was introduced, they were explained, their history was kind of vaguely given, who they were, their personality, what they look like, so on and so forth, like most characters. There was a small forbidden romance that didn't really go anywhere. I do like that it didn't necessarily end in like a end romance or end ship, but I did feel like it could have been taken just one step further. So the reader felt a little bit of closure because it felt kind of like the end of the book just kind of stopped and that whole plotline was just kind of like dropped. And it's just like, but what happened to them? Like, we will never know. I thought the book itself could have been just a little bit more, it could have been cleaner, like just a bit, and a little bit more cohesive and easier for the reader to kind of comprehend as they are reading. And I do feel like the ending was a little bit abrupt, but these things didn't take a lot away from the story. They're just like little nitpicky things that just kind of bother me as I was reading. And I will be picking up Stacey Lee in the future. I have been looking at Stacey Lee's other historical Asian fiction books, and I am really interested. Every time I go to the bookstore, I look at her books, but I've never actually bought one. So I do really enjoy her writing and will be picking her up in the near future. But yes, like I said, those are the 4 books that I have read. Manga will be in a different video coming out within the next couple of weeks, so look out for that. And yes, look at me filming a video. Please like, comment, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys all next time. All love. Bye.